So we have a special guest speaker today. Yeah. He needs no introduction. That's correct. And the reason we are doing this is, I don't know if you guys knew this or not, but Monday, Walt celebrated his anniversary. Yep. Not his wedding anniversary, not his birthday. He's been clean for 10 years. Very big deal, and we are proud of him.
Wow, proud of you guys, because I couldn't have done it here without this group here.
And so Walt wants to share his story, and so I'm just here to
help me stay on track.
No. So Walt, why don't you start? You've been telling the story to Crossroads for about a year now, so you got it down pat. So go ahead.
Well, I guess the first thing I want to say is that that song I just played, and it's sort of about what this is all about. If you listen to the song, she goes through about how thanking everybody that has been for her and guided her, but she doesn't say thank God I do till the end. And sometimes I get confused. I owe my life to the gathering and to this community. So sometimes I'm giving the credit to the community all the time, and I don't give enough credit to the fact that God put the community here for me. So that's why this song is important to me, sort of the same way I go through it. I talk about community, but I don't always bring up the fact that God put everyone in this room here, and everyone as we go through this, and I talk about this. So many of the people in this room has impacted my life dramatically. Even they don't even have any idea how much they've impacted my life. So it was 10 years ago, October 14th, 2014. I got off the bus in New Orleans, and I went into the bathroom at the Greyhound bus and stuck the last needle in my arm. So it's a pretty big deal. But how I got there and what happened since then is what we're going to talk about a little bit tonight. I didn't realize I was going to get emotional about that. I didn't come, not unlike most of the people in this room, I didn't come from a crossroads or from a religious family. I grew up as a pretty much lower middle class. I didn't go to church. Well, I went to church until I got old enough to sit on the bar stool with my dad. And then I didn't have to go to church no more. It was a hard family. I mean, it's sort of different. I think your dad would understand it more than most of the people here. Some of the people, like Bruce older people might understand the baby booming age. These people grew up differently. They lived a harder life than we do. And a lot of times the parents, especially my father, and I think your father is a lot like it, believed that it was a hard world. And if they didn't teach you to be hard, then you weren't going to make it in that world. So sometimes in society today looks at it, the fact that my father was pretty hard on us. And they say, oh, that was abuse. That was a horrible thing that he did. But in his heart, he was trying to prepare me for a very rough world. And like that prayer said, accepting hardship into peace, turning hardship into peace. A lot of the things that he did that were pretty cruel did set me up to be where I am today and to be the person I am today. And so advantages and disadvantages, right? Sin within your zone, as Matt would teach. To give you a good example, and some people have told us before, I wasn't more than about 9 or 10 years old, and we were out in the yard cleaning up stuff in the yard. We were 6 kids. I was At that time, I was the youngest. My younger sister came later. At that time, I was the youngest. And I was a 10-year-old kid, so I'm up there screwing around. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And my dad was with a buddy of his, and they were sitting there drinking, watching us. And my dad says, that's the laziest son of a bitch I've ever seen. So that wasn't a very nice thing for a dad to say, to people in front. But what it did was it gave me a work ethic after that, because I've been trying to prove to my dad, even though he's been dead for a long time, that I am not the laziest person ever seen. So it gave me a work ethic why I still work so much. It just drilled into my head that I had to be a hard worker, right? So that was an advantage and a disadvantage. It created a work ethic that I can be proud of. But unfortunately, it also created a work ethic that felt that work was more important than anything else I did. More important than family, more important than anything. I had to be working. I had to be proving this all the time. So anyway, I grew up, in a pretty rough family. One of the other examples I always tease people, say, when a cop pulls up behind you and turns on the lights, everybody gets nervous, right? You get nervous, especially if you might have done something wrong. But I always tell you, once you've been in jail, it's not that bad. So you're not afraid of it no more. No big deal. The cop pulls me over. I don't care. What's he going to do? It's sort of weird. But so my father was physically abusive. He taught us to fight. He used to take us to bars and try and instigate fights. Like I said, his whole idea was we had to be tough enough, But once you've been hit in the mouth, it's not that big of a deal. You get over it in a couple of days, it heals, right? So you don't have to be afraid of everybody. Somebody's going to hit you, So like I said, I'm going through this just to talk about the fact that, as I talk about what way things went, there is good in everything. And that's what, I don't know, one of the Christian songs, God can turn anything into good, right? They talk about that all the time. And he has done that. Every step of the way, every bad thing that's happened to me has changed me in a way that now God says, okay, now I'm going to take this and I'm going to turn it into something good. So we're going to take the fact that you're a workaholic and we're going to put you over at Camp Hope and let you work 18 hours a day, So he's done that with everything in my life. So it's really, really been great. So, but to continue, I'm a high school dropout. Actually, not a high school dropout because I didn't go to high school. I dropped out, the first month of high school. Things always came easy to me as far as learning stuff. It came too easy, probably. So I just wasn't interested. Dropped out of high school, went to work right away. As soon as I turned 17, the day I turned 17, I went to the recruiting office. I first went into the National Guard, and then I did my 6 months in the National Guard, and then I went into the Navy. I did 10 years in the Navy. I was in the submarine force, and I was a diver. And I spent all 10 years at sea, so I went to a lot of places. I've been to 27 different countries. I've been across the equator twice. I've been across the international date line about 3 or 4 times. I'm not even sure how many times I went across that. And in the submarine force, there's another thing. You learn. You learn how to, it's like the ultimate institutionalization. You work for 6 hours and you're up for 12 hours and there's just nothing else to do. You read and you eat. That's the only things to do the whole time you're in the submarine. And we were in for a long time. The longest I was ever underwater was 110 days. We did that during the Iran hostage affair in '78, when the Iranians took our American citizens hostage, and we got deployed, and we sat out there in the Persian Gulf for 110 days waiting for something to happen. Nothing ever happened. So it sort of didn't have any purpose. But I got out of the military. I worked in construction for a short period of time. And then I went into respiratory therapy. And I got my degree in respiratory therapy, and I was a traveling therapist, which was pretty much ultimate for me. Because no matter what I did, one of the things is weird. I don't want to sound too cliche, but I was always chasing something, and I could never figure out what it was. I was always trying to do something more, something different. I only went into the submarine force because in boot camp, the guy came up and said, "Anybody go into submarine force?" And everybody else said, "No." So I said, "Well, I'll do it." I always wanted to do what everybody else wasn't willing to do, but it was chasing an emptiness in me. And now I know what that was. But I didn't know what it was, and I was always constantly trying to get the better job or do something different. So I was a traveling therapist. I traveled for a while around the States, then I went to Saudi Arabia. And I was working in Saudi Arabia, and that's probably the next big moment of my life. Saudi Arabia was an interesting place because you had to go to school and learn all the laws. So we had these short classes to learn all the laws to make sure you didn't go over there and violate any of them. And the laws were there was no drinking out, no alcohol in play anywhere in Saudi Arabia. You couldn't be in a room alone with a woman of any type unless you had a chaperone couple in the same room. So even when we were working, if I had to go in and treat a female, I had to have a chaperone with me. So you had all these rules, right? And then I got all prepared for it. Like I said, I was in the submarine force. I could handle this, right? No different, I fly over there and we go up in the mountain. We were in the southwest portion of Saudi Arabia, which is mountains, which most people don't even know they have them. But I mean, they had high mountains. Our hospital was 10,000 on the top of a mountain, 10,500 feet high. So get up this mountain, get dropped off. My boss meets me on the bus and he says, "Well, you might as well come on over and have a drink." Well, couldn't drink there, I thought, right? Everybody made their own whiskey. Everybody had parties. I probably drank more in Saudi Arabia than I've ever drank before on a regular basis. We used to make our own whiskey in the kitchen. But one of the good things that happened over there was, I don't know, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was one of the guys, I think he was an Indian guy. He pointed, the women all had to wear, what were they called, Malou? Yeah, they had to wear the black long things over them, and they had to have their head covered, or they had black hair, one or the other, yeah. And he points me out the window, he says, "There's the Black Beauty," and it would be Malou. She would be walking home from work every day. He called her the Black Beauty because she was just all covered that way. So that sparked my interest, and we had a pretty unique relationship because you're not supposed to be having a relationship. You're not allowed to have a relationship or nothing like that. Bashir was his name. Yep. She used to make brownies for me and put them in the mail. I would go down and pick up the mail for the respiratory therapy. And she worked in administration, so she would leave little gifts in the box for me, little brownies and stuff like that. We had this little secret relationship. And then we left Saudi Arabia. We went on vacation together, and we were supposed to be going back. So we had round the world tickets. You could buy like a train pass for 30 days. As long as you keep going in the same direction, you can get off anywhere you want to and get back on. And so we went to a couple places, and we flew into Jersey, where my dad was. We flew into Florida, and then we went up to Jersey, where my dad was. And different in immigration. Immigration was a little different back in those days because we had talked about getting married, but while we were in Hawaii, we found out that the company we were working with had lost the contract. So if we went back, we would have to go back for longer. And so I called the immigration on the phone and said, "Hey, this is our situation. What should we do?" the lady on the phone said, marry her right now, because if you marry her outside the country, then she can't come back here for 2 years. So we got married the next week. I called up my traveling company, and they gave me an assignment at Penn State again. I'd worked there before. They sent me back to Penn State, which is about 3.5 hours from my dad's house. So we went there, got an apartment set up and everything. While we were gone for 1 week, in 1 week's time, my sisters organized a complete wedding, down to dress, flowers, the whole 9 yards. We came back the next Saturday. We'd only been there for a week. We came back the next Saturday because I had to be at work on Monday. And my dad got the mayor to come down and marry us. Pretty interesting.
How long have you been dating at that point?
Well, well, not a little bit longer than that. Yeah. Yeah.
So like 3 months.
Yeah.
Okay, so 3 months you marry this girl. You've been married for how long?
32 years.
32 years. I mean, that's pretty impressive. Hey, 3 weeks, like that's like. Don't get any ideas, young man. It takes a little bit longer.
Yeah. But that goes right with my personality through the whole thing. I see something, I gotta move on it. You can't play around with this thing, you know. But yeah, so we settled in Pennsylvania for about a year, and then we had Annalisa, and Annalisa was born, and then we went. This person that can't be quiet now, I'm going to tell you something. She was the quietest baby you ever wanted to meet. She never said a word. We had a Suzuki Samurai. If anybody knows what that is, it's a little tiny Jeep, right? Tiny. We loaded that thing up in Pennsylvania, and the car seat had her in a car seat in the back facing out, facing backwards, because you had to be facing that way. In the back, we couldn't even see her from the front because we had so much crap in that Suzuki Samurai. And we drove to Florida and never had a peep out of her. So, and then she started talking.
No, stay focused. Stay focused.
So, but we moved around a lot, constantly. I mean, we were down in Florida for a little less than a year. Then we went to West Virginia. Then we went to Ohio. Then we went back to Florida. And it was all the same thing. It's all that, trying to chase this thing, something. I was always just gunning for something. There was never a job that was good enough. There was never a house that was good enough. There was never a place that was good enough. And part of that bad part about that personality was that it was, you guys probably aren't old enough to know these movies, but damn the torpedoes, It didn't matter what was in my way. It didn't matter what the rules were. It didn't matter what anything was. If I wanted to get to something, I was going to get to it, and I would deal with the consequences later. So that's the negative part about it. I lie, cheat, or steal, whatever it took. If I wanted something, I had to get it, and I was going after it. And that was that emptiness. I mean, I just had to fill this up somehow, and it just couldn't happen. I mean, there was no way of filling it up. So we were around about, and we come down to, we're living in Florida, and my brother died, and I had a fire equipment company, and I was running this fire equipment company. And I was already in my 50s at that point, and up and down ladders. And I fell off a couple ladders, banged myself up here and there. You do. That's the construction world. If you're going to do construction, you're going to get busted up at some point. So something's going to go wrong.
But go ahead, keep going.
So in some ways, this was just plain ignorance. At the time, there was this opioid crisis going on. And they talked about pill mills and stuff like that, but I never paid attention to that stuff. I didn't even know what they were talking about. But I never went to the doctor hardly ever, and I was in a good bit of pain. So there was this sign out front that said, of this building said pain management. So that's where you go, right? Pain management doctor. I don't know how much people know about Oxycontin and oxycodone, but I walked into this doctor and he never took an X-ray, never did anything. He handed me a prescription for 90 oxycodone 15s and 90 oxycodone 30s. Now, I took it for the pain. I started taking it for the pain. But if you've ever taken opiates of any type, there's a certain euphoria that comes with them and an energy boost that comes with them. And like I said, I was in my 50s. I had been banged up pretty good. I had kids that were 20 and 25 working for me. All of a sudden, I could keep up with them again. You know, I could work again. I had all this energy with it. But like we know with all opiates, you can never get enough of them. The more you take, the more you need. So it started out innocently. I have to take responsibility for the fact that I abused them because it made me feel good and made me work better. And I wanted more of that. It was more of that, damn the torpedoes. I'll deal with the consequences later. Well, the consequences were pretty tough. I don't even remember, but I mean, I had the amount of pills that the doctors prescribed for me were unimaginable today. I mean, I had gotten, besides the Oxy 30s, they put me on the 180s and 160s, and they just kept giving me more and more and more, and I kept taking more and more and more. One of the hardest parts about that addiction is that the euphoria part is only short term. After a while, you're just trying to not be sick. Because when these things wear off and you're addicted as bad as I was, you're just deathly sick. And it starts about every 3 hours, and that timeline gets shorter and shorter and shorter. I thought about it. I was thinking about it the other day. Everybody knows, well, not everybody knows, but I went through cancer, and I went through chemotherapy with my cancer. And chemotherapy can be pretty rough. Anybody that's had it knows that. And some people were impressed the fact that I kept going and I didn't get as bad as everybody else. But you know why? Because it was candy compared to withdrawing from opiates. It was nothing. I mean, it's one of the hardest things I could ever imagine. So the addiction caused me to just go completely crazy. I mean, at one point I was spending $300 a day on heroin. I lost everything. I mean, I was in debt with everybody. I was stealing from people. I was conning people. I was doing whatever it took to get enough money to get my next fix. I went to detox in Port Charlotte for 7 days. I got off, but I took no treatment other than that. Needless to say, I fell back into it again. One of the problems also is, and this is nobody's fault, I'm not blaming this on anybody else, but you create well, just like now, I have surrounded myself by people that help me to improve, help me to remember God, to thrive in this world. I was surrounded by people that were in the same addiction crisis that I was. They were either addicted like I was, or they were selling to me, or whatever. And it was all over Florida. I mean, I knew everybody there. I knew where to get, and it was always around me. So on October 13th, at night, I was slinging meat. We call it slinging meat. Okay, this was the ultimate con and the ultimate thievery. What we would do was we get this frozen meat, and there was trucks. These companies did this, and they hired drug addicts to do this because they knew drug addicts would hustle out there for them and sell their crap. So it's the frozen meats, and you go out there and you knock on a door, and you give them a bullshit story, basically. I mean, I would go up and I'd knock on some lady's door and I'd say, you know, ma'am, I really hate to bother you, you know. I'm with Ocean 6 and I had a truck with the thing. I was delivering down to Miss Jones down there, you know, nice old lady, such a sweet old lady. But she ordered and she accidentally online, she made a double order. Now, I don't want to burden her with that, so I went ahead and took the one order, but I got to do something with this order. So, you know, if you're interested, I'd give it to you at cost. You know, just to get it off my truck here. So, you know, and they would buy it, and you know, and you sell it for cash. You could go for cash, and now you got cash to run down the street and buy some more pills or some more heroin off somebody else. And this was a cycle of about 3 or 4 months. So. One day I had to quit. It had to end. So I drove to the bus station with their truck, parked it in their garage nearby, got on a bus, and came to New Orleans. Originally, the plan was that there was a drug treatment center here that I was supposed to go into. But, and I talked to them on the phone, but when I got here, they said, sorry, this is only for Louisiana residents. So I was ended up in New Orleans with $67 in my pocket and no plan, and already, you know, struggling with withdrawals. So I went to the New Orleans mission. And I went in there and became what they call a disciple. It just means somebody that stays there and goes through their little program there. And again, it was still part of the lie. I mean, I signed a statement of faith there. I had no faith, but I had to sign a statement of faith or you couldn't stay, right? So I go into New Orleans mission, and I was really trying to figure this out. I withdrew in the bathroom on the second floor in New Orleans mission. And if you want to know what that would be like, not the withdrawals, but what the bathroom was like at the New Orleans mission, talk to Alex or Bruce. This mission was nasty. I mean, it was a nasty place. But on the bathroom floor, they're throwing up, and the other end too, for a week. One of the guys there, and I still can't remember his name. We called him Blackie because he was black, but I don't remember his name. But he would come in at night and give me M&Ms because the chocolate helps with withdrawals. And he was a junkie too. You know, it was something, but I got through it, and this is where it starts getting interesting, really interesting for me anyway. I got pretty much clean. I'm not withdrawing directly. There's still some after effects. I mean, your legs. It takes you probably 6-7 months before your legs get back. It's just weakness from all the stuff that goes on. So I'm working there at the mission for John Proctor. And I'm getting fed and filling out again. I was down to 20, I had a 29-inch waistline when I checked into the mission. That was a long time ago, wasn't it? So, get fed, get fattened up a little bit, you know, and then it started to worry me about the other end of the deal, right? You know, so, you know, I'm a man. I left my wife and daughter in a freaking hotel room. So, it's time that I do what I'm supposed to do. I got to man up. I got to get a job. I got to start supporting family again. Uh, so this is something weird. And again, if you're not familiar with the mission, you don't really understand it totally. But when somebody tried to leave the discipleship program, you get attacked. I mean, every pastor, pastors, everybody, being on you, trying to talk you out of it. It was just, they didn't want it to happen. I went to John Proctor and said, look, I had called up one of the fire equipment companies and made arrangements to have a job. And I went to John Proctor and I said, John, look, I got a family. I'm supposed to be feeding them. I'm supposed to be taking care of them. I gotta go to work. I just can't work here. I appreciate what you've done for me, but I gotta go. And unlike the normal things, when like I said, everybody coming after you, John Proctor said to me, he says, well, Walt, he says, man's, I can understand a man's got to do what a man's got to do, but he says, if there's any way you can give me another 30 days, maybe I can work something out for you. I said, well, the hell was another 30 days? I'll give it a shot, right? 2 weeks later, Bruce Dale comes walking into the kitchen. I'm working in the kitchen, says, hey, you want to come work with me? I thought, wow, John Proctor must have worked this out, right? And then I said, sure. He says, well, I got to clear it with John Proctor first. I said, hell, I thought, the hell, this is weird, right? It's a coincidence, but it's really weird, So then I started working with Bruce. And that was an ordeal in itself. I mean, I'll give you a hint. If you ever want to work with Bruce is a hard worker. And if you get tired and you're working too hard and it's getting too hot, bring up horses to him. He'll talk to you for a half hour, right, while you take a break. That's how you take a break with working with Bruce.
That is kind of true.
But Bruce kept talking about this community. And I had never heard a church called community before. I heard a church called congregations and all this stuff. And he kept talking about this community. I want to, talking about how great this community is and get you involved in the community and talk to me, go come to church with me. You know what? I was in that mission for months. You had to go to church 3 times a day to eat. That was the rule. You had to go listen to these crazy people go up there and talk all this crap, in order to eat. So, it was, Bruce said, you ought to come to church with me. Another church, that's what I need, right? But Bruce was a nice guy and we're working together, so I went to church with him. And I came here to the gathering and everything started changing dramatically after that. I met Matt. I walked in here and Aaron Johnson and Brett Thompson sat down out there and talked to me. And I really thought they actually cared. Where I've been to church before and you get the greeting people that come to greet you, it's all phony crap, But this really felt real when I talked to them. And then, then Matt met with Matt. Matt started coming out once a week out to, we were working on this Lacombe. And we're working out there and Matt started coming out once a week. Where he was coming over to the mission before that, talked to me directly, and he was giving me books, and I was reading. Couldn't burn through some books there, But then he started coming out to Lacombe. And one of the interesting things that happened there was, as I said, these people, if you were at the mission, you were so tired of going to church. I mean, there was like the same people going to altar calls every time, the whole 9 yards. But when Matt would come out and come out to see me originally, and they just kept pulling more people in. And they would sit there. We had this cafeteria, and this whole group of people, they didn't have to be there. Nobody told them they had to go to church. But guys were just coming in and they were sitting, they were listening. They were asking questions, and Matt was answering their questions, and it was really a beautiful thing. I mean, that to see that that these guys that didn't want to go to church would go to church. When it was something, would come and listen to something that was real, and I think that's the difference. It was real. So then we started bringing people here. At one point, we had a couple of the band full of guys come here on Saturday night to go to church, and they didn't have to go to church. I mean, you had to go to church every Sunday at the mission. So this was they still had to go to church on Sunday. This didn't, if they came here Saturday night, we used services Saturday night, it didn't get them out of Sunday. They still had to go to church on Sunday. And most of the time, you missed a meal. You didn't get to eat Saturday because the meal was happening during church time. So these guys were willing to miss a meal and come to church when they still had to go to church the next day. So if you ever want to know what the difference is here, how important what happens here is, and how different it is from everything else, that's probably the greatest example. We could fill this room, with people, and they would still be coming if we didn't have their bosses people to run that place weren't crazy. So it goes on. We're going through things. We're working out in Lacombe. They get this new pastor, head guy running the place. It was funny because I was reading a book, one of the books. I can't remember which one it was. I remember what page it was on. It was on page 187. And the book says, in there it says, if anybody ever tells you that God told them to tell you something, run. They're crazy, right? Go to the next church. Old John, I can't remember his last name, but the pastor gets up there and says, God told me to take your phones away from you, right? But that's how crazy thing it was. And then Deb was teaching here, and word got back to them that Deb taught here, and women ain't allowed to do them kind of things in their church, and they're not allowed to associate with people that let women do that kind of thing. So the war broke out. We were the devil. Matt was the spawn of the devil, and it was just, all because Deb was allowed to speak one night. That's how crazy these people were, right? So went on for a little while, and then we got called in, and we were told, we basically called in and told we couldn't come to service no more here, and that nothing. And I got into a little bit of a battle with him, and I left. And it's funny because he says to me, he says, well, go on, see what your church will do for you or something like that. I said, I think I will. And I walked out, grabbed my bag, walked out. I stood on the porch. I called Matt. This was the Friday before, Thursday or Friday before, that must have been a Thursday before 4th of July weekend. I called Matt. He comes, picks me up. I used to tell people that when they say what you should do about people on the street and stuff like that, it's good to talk about it, but I don't see anybody living on your couch. You're not bringing them in. You're not really doing anything for them. You're going to make yourself feel good that you did something, but you're really not doing anything for them, right? So I get out there, I'm on the street there. I called Matt. Matt pulls up in the car, picks me up. We stopped here, but he takes me over, and he drops me off at Bruce's house and says, this is where the key is. His truck keys are in there. They're going for the weekend, just relax. Who does that? I'm a drug addict, right? I'm living in a friggin' mission. Who takes you and gives you your keys to your house and the keys to your truck and just go on,
Well, just so you know, we had some conversations, and I was like, Bruce, what should we do? We got to find a place for him to live. And Bruce was like, well, I'm going out of town. You want to just bring it to my house? On our way to the lake.
Yeah.
And I was like, are you sure? I mean, I was like, we know you, but we know you, right?
But you don't know me.
We had this conversation for a while. We're like, okay, let's do it. We wanted to push up, and then we're like, we'll figure this out. We'll make it happen for you. So, go ahead.
Yeah. So then, and then Alex had a spare room. So then I went over and stayed at the house where Alex was. Did some work for Mark out there mowing lawns and hustling. And then one day Matt says, "Well, why don't you take over Camp Hope for me?" Fortunately, I was able to get a hold of my wife, and I went. Bruce lent me this van, and I hustled down to Florida, picked her up, and then Annalisa decided to come along too. So we came back and we ran Camp Hope. And so the first thing I learned was that there is people that really serve and really care, and there's people that do it to make themselves feel better. This group here, I met a lot of those people who do it to make themselves feel better at the mission when they would come in. But this group here is a group that does something that actually makes a difference. This community, and that was amazing. I'd never ran into people like that before. I guess the fact that you all came here from Crossroads or somewhere else, and your whole life was geared around serving, that it became natural for you guys, but it's not natural for the rest of the world. This is not what the rest of the world does. And then, God keeps placing me in these places. First, He placed Bruce in there. Then He placed Matt in there. And He placed it, and then Aaron and Brett at the door, and Alex, and He's putting these people in my path, and I have a choice. I have a choice. I can pay attention to them or not. I always had this confusion in my life about, does God really deal with everyday things? Does He really is He really bothering with this? And if He is, then how come He isn't helping all them kids that are in the hospital, at the children's hospital, dying? So if He's involved in everyday issues, then why isn't He taking care of them instead of taking care of me? The hell have I got to do with this thing, right? But what I've come to realize is that He's not making me do anything. He's not changing me. He's given me the opportunity to change. The people are here. I can choose whether I hang around with Bruce or I hang around with some people that are a little bit different. He has, what's that word you guys always use around here? Keeping people on track, keeping accountable. The accountability that comes with this organization, with this community, is tremendous, and you don't even know you're doing it. Nobody comes up to me and says, "Walt, you shouldn't be doing that," right? Well, Allie does, and Aaron. Allie and Aaron sort of hold me to the burners every once in a while, but most of the time, people aren't. But I just know. I don't know if I'm afraid of disappointing them, you guys, or what, but there's this accountability that is just in the air that makes me stop and think before I do something stupid, because I still got all that crap up here, let me tell you. I still gun for it. I still come to this idea that I'm going to do something different. I'm going to go after it. This is crazy. Why am I sitting in this situation? Why am I not doing something different? I've tried. I went to work at the hospital. What, did I last a month? I got wrapped up with this guy, crazy guy with the restaurant. Couple days. I keep telling everybody that I want to live in San Diego, but I told Matt the other day I've come to the understanding that maybe they'll bury me in San Diego, because that's probably the closest I'm ever going to get to it, because I can't get away from this place. I mean, I just and everything. I mean, the volunteers coming in, Camp Hope was the best place for me because I got to see what service was really all about. I had 300 college kids giving up their spring break to come down and serve. I just couldn't. I mean, this stuff was unimaginable in my mind. I didn't know it existed. So it was so inspiring and everything. So that, we went to LA Bible, we went through that, went through first the discipleship class in LA Bible, and this was the perfect fit for me, this community here. So God knew what I needed, and He put me in an opportunity to see and to work with this. I'm sure a lot of you come from real regular churches at some point in your life. There's no way that there's a church, I don't know of any Christian church that would put up with what I think and what I say. And I don't mean that in a negative, I'm allowed to think what I want to think. I'm allowed to hear. I can feel free to have an opinion that's different than other people's about God and about Jesus and about the church and about everything else. Now, maybe that's because, like I said, one of the reasons I think differently than most people in this room is that I didn't come here with any history of church. I didn't have any idea. I didn't have any, for the sake of understanding, Jesus was not my savior when I came here. I didn't know any of that stuff. So when Matt started handing me books and books and books and books, and we went to LA Bible where you got different opinions from a lot of different people, I was allowed to form my own opinions. And so they're different than Matt's. And they may be different than a lot of people here. But that's okay. I wasn't thrown out of the community, which I probably would have been in other communities. So I don't know that I could have stayed in this community if it wasn't like that. So that's the importance of the way God's worked in this. And said, Matt told me one time that God meets you where you're at. And I think that's what He's done. He's met me where I'm at. He put me in an environment that I could thrive in. And that doesn't mean other environments are wrong. I joke about things and I say things sarcastically, but that doesn't mean the other environments are wrong. They're just wrong for me. Somebody else can thrive well in them. I'm a firm believer in that. I read a lot of things. I read things from Hebrews. I read Christians. I read Muslims. I read it all because I think that God. I don't think I got the corner on anything. I don't think I think that God meets Islam with what maybe Muhammad is their Jesus. I don't know, but I know one thing. I don't know. That's what I know. I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows. I think we all have our theories and we all have our opinions, but I don't think anybody knows. But the song that we played is perfect because this community has saved my life. It saved my family. And I don't think that there is any way I don't think I could ever work hard enough to repay it. And for the people that are here, said Matt, Bruce, Alex, I have learned so much from everybody, especially the family structure stuff. I didn't grow up in a family where Dad actually gave a shit what I was doing. They never went to anything that I did. I didn't do it with my kids. I went to very few things that were involved with the kids when they were growing up because I just didn't understand. And then I come here and look at this. I mean, people take off work to go to some stupid thing at the elementary school, you know? It just doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense to me, but I see it. I see it in the families. I see it in the kids. We have a ton of kids around here now. And you see the way the kids have grown up, these young men here. Geez, you're proud of them. You don't see that. I mean, the young lady, the Johnson kids, they're not, it's not even fair, you know? I mean, they shouldn't be allowed to be around. But I guess what I would say, this is about thank you. Thank you to God for putting you people here. Thank you for everything that everybody's done, the way that everybody has taken me in. And I know that can be hard sometimes. I can be a little rough around the edges. So I am more than grateful for everything that's I've been involved in here. And I don't know what else.
I think that it comes at the right time. We just celebrated.
Sukkot.
Well, we just celebrated Rosh Hashanah,
Yeah.
which is debatable, but the meaning of that is just the idea of newness, new life.
Yeah.
Right? And you have just celebrated something that is an anniversary to remind you that your life is new. And you had a new chance, a second chance, or a third chance, maybe a 20th chance, whatever it was, but God gave you this new life. And then we celebrated Yom Kippur, where you are not just there to remember what He has rescued you from, and all of that past that can be washed away, but also to pray for a community. We pray together. That Yom Kippur isn't just individuals, it's as a community. We wish to come before God. And now Sukkot, which is all about community, and all about the entire world coming into the tents underneath God to celebrate together. In the song that you sang, the last song, Gratitude, I think summarizes not just what you're talking about with the Lord David song, but also like we are so grateful, not just to be following God, but to hear your story, Walt, to see what God has done in your life, to be reminded that He can do that in all of our lives. And that your one story that is just proof that God does care about you. You know, even though it might seem like, well, how can He care about me? But He did. And He put you in a place and He surrounded you with people that loved you. And you have been an example of what God can do. It is miraculous, and we are so grateful that you chose to hang out with Bruce and talk about horses. But I'm also grateful that God put Bruce in your life, that He put Alex in your life, that He put these people in your life, because we got to see God working. And that is amazing.
Yep.
So thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being vulnerable to this guy. I know how hard, you don't know how hard that is for him to be vulnerable, but man, that is huge. And so thank you, Walt, for that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.